Mai ka makani o launi ui ke ahe o ka olu. E kipa mai ka mehana I ka poli o ka ina niu hele vai. Paia e koleo. Aloha e aloha e aloha e.
Okay, so our first speaker today will be our very own Kumu Hau'oli Lorenzo Ilarco, who was raised by the cold Kipu'upu'u rain in the mountainous lands of Waimea, Hawaii. He currently lives in his Kane's ancestral lands of Waialua, Oahu, and he is one of our Kumu'olelo Hawaii here on campus. Hau'oli says that it is through Hawaiian language that he honors and celebrates the Manuoku and other native species of Hawaii. Following Hau'oli, we'll have another kumu from our campus, Kaiulani Murphy, who is a kupa of also a kupa of the Ua Kipu'upu'u of Waimea and Hawaii, and she has been learning and voyaging with Hoʻolauleʻa for the past 20 years and loves being able to share her experience as a kumu ho'okelewa'a at our college. And then finally, we'll have Rich Downs, who's a biologist for the Pacific Rim Conservation and who also serves as the coordinator of Hui Manu Oku, where for the past 7 years, he has been coordinating the efforts of an array of government agencies, education institutions, and conservation groups to enhance awareness, appreciation, understanding, and conservation of the white tern. Rich also leads the Hui's White Tern Citizen Science Project, in which data collected by citizen scientists are contributing to a better understanding of this understudied species and the fascinating story of its unique relationship with the most developed part of the Hawaiian island chain. Rich has co-authored papers published in peer-reviewed scientific journals on the white terns, including the Wilson Journal of Ornithology and the Citizen Science Project, which has been profiled in the media, including Smithsonian Institution and the BBC. Again, help me welcome our three panelists today, Pa'ipa'i Lima Yalako, and we're going to go right into our first presenter, who is Kumu Hau'oli, who will share about Manuokua and Olelo Hawaii and their connections to Hina and Ku.
Aloha nui kako, kako. Mahalo everybody for being here. I really, really appreciate it. Especially talking about Manu, talking about birds, right? So as mahalo again, Kale, and the rest of the panelists for your kokua, your kapo'o. And I'm really excited. Again, my part is just gonna be super short. And what I'm looking at is really the Ola Hawaii, right? The Hawaiian language of the Manu Oku, right? And the intersections of that. So I'm gonna do a sort of quick presentation. Can everybody see this? Okay, all right. So Manu Oku, can we all say Manu Oku? Hanaho Manu Oku. Awesome. Okay, so Manu Oku, that's what we're here for, right? This is the workshop. Okay, so looking at the Manu Oku, okay, so this right here is that bird, right? So looking at the language of the name, right? So let's break it down a little bit. So we have three sort of big main words here. We have Manu. Everybody say Manu. Okay. O. And then Ku. Hanaho Ku. And put it all together. Manu o Ku. Oh yeah. All right. So what does this mean? So Manu, most of us know as bird, right? Manu means bird, but what it really means is a winged creature. So any creature that has a wing, so a bat is considered the ope'apea, the Hawaiian ope'apea is considered a Manu, right? This o here is a type of article, I guess you could say, but it means of, right? Of, and for my Hawaiian language students, you guys know what exactly the purpose of this is, right? Of, yeah, belonging to something. Yeah. Ku is the name of a deity. It's one of the main deity within Kanaka culture, right? So what do we have when we put Manu Oku together? We have the bird or of Ku, right? Or the winged creature of Ku. Yeah. So that's the Manu o Ku, right? So the Manu o Ku, interestingly, right? So um I really enjoy the Hawaiian language newspapers, right? That's kind of my jam. That's my area. I love listening to the old Hawaiian tapes of native speakers, and I did a kind of a big, broad, kind of big net research of these different resources, and I could not find any sources, right? That's dates back to 1834 that talk about the Manoku in the Hawaiian language newspapers. There wasn't one reference. Okay, so where do we get this reference from? Where do we get this? How do we know about the Manoku? So the only reference that I could find, the earliest reference that is from the Hawaiian dictionary, right, by Pukui and Albert here. So within Pukui and Albert, they have the spelling of it with these sort of hyphens over here, and you kind of see it. Some people they spell it that kind of way. You know, many people. That's one of the questions that people have with Hoʻolauleʻa Hawaii is how do you spell the Manoku? I see it spelled several different ways. So you see here this hyphen here is used to separate, right? Those big phrases that we looked at, Manuoku. I kind of spell it together as one word, Manuoku, right? Other people also will spell it three separate words, right? So the reason why that I choose this way or this way is that when we look at our modern orthography, the rules of our modern, the ways that we spell things and write things, right? We no longer use this hyphen, right? In the Hawaiian language newspapers, the hyphen was actually used as a kahako. It was to indicate that the vowel after the hyphen has a kahako, right? So what I'm saying here is that if our kupuna saw this, they might think that it's pronounced manuo, and then not make sense because you kind of have a kahako over the K, right? So this, many people believe that this sort of insertion of these hyphens here again are really for pronunciation purposes. Right? So you see these again with this name of an ali'i, yeah, Umi Aliloa, who is Hawaii Island, Waipi'o, Waimea side, the best side. But so Umi Aliloa, his name also has that, right? Umi Aliloa, Umi of Liloa, right? So you'll see it spelled these three different kinds of ways, just as the Manuoku is spelled. Okay. One thing that I want to specifically point out here, again, is this term here, o and a, right? So these terms here, we call them hoa, we call them friends, and they both mean of. Okay, so it's kind of like in French languages, romantic languages, right? There's a masculine terms and there's feminine terms, right? In Hawaiian, we have terms that we call kino o terms and kino a terms, and what it really has to do with is your relationship to that item, right? The way that it's being possessed and it's being owned, right? So in our relationship here, what this is telling us is that this is the child of Liloa, right? So Umi of Liloa. So A says it's a generation below. O here is saying of, which means it could either be a generation above, or this Manu is an integral part of Ku, right? Ku did not have a choice in being a possessor of this bird. It could also indicate that the bird itself is Ku, right? It's not a manifestation of Ku. It's not a child of Ku. It is Ku. It is our deity, right? So Manuoku, Umi a Liloa. Okay. So going back a little bit to the dictionary, so Pukui tells us, they give us one source. Where I love this picture. It's so cute, yeah. I ripped all these photos off of the internet. They're not mine. I'm sure Rich has seen many of these photos before, has maybe even taken some. But I love it. It's so cute. But the source that Pukui gives is from Niihau. Yeah, very interesting. that this term, Manu Oku, has only survived because of an Ihau community, right? So meaning that this term came from them, right? And if anybody knows about the Ihau community, it's a very religious, Christian community. And the fact that this name, Manu Oku, or bird of Ku, has continued within that community, right? Is it also, kind of an interesting indicator about culture and language, right? So anyway, this term comes from the Ihau. Okay? And so that's the Manu Oku. Okay. The white fairy tern. Yeah. Some other of its sort of hoa, right? So some other again in a Hawaiian perspective, these next manu that I'm gonna show you are within the sort of same ohana, right? They're indicated as being a part of the same family, right? So when we think of nene goose, right? When we think of maybe the honey creepers, right? In a Hawaiian perspective, they're from a separate family or a separate ohana of birds, right? These birds are within the same ohana. Okay. So we have the noyo. The noyo is this bird here. Noyo also interestingly is kind of the general term for this family of terns of noddies. Yeah. So this is the general term for this family of birds. Other terms that we have is eki eki, yeah, and lai hina. I want to point out lai hina because lai means forehead. It means, your head area. Yeah. Hina. Anybody know what hina means? Yes, it means the god, right? But hina also means gray. It means whitish, right? So it's telling you white head, gray head. Yeah. So that's the lai hina. Okay. So everybody say really, really quickly, noyo. Eki eki. And lai hina. Likae. All right. Here's another one of its hoa. We have pakalakala and akala is another name for it, right? And so this is the gray backed. So everybody say pakalakala. And everybody say kala. Okay. So these terms definitely has to do with the coloration, right? Pakalakala is that this sort of kind of coloration here. Okay. Next one we have is the eva eva. Somebody say eva eva. One more time, eva eva. Nice. It's a sooty one. Kind of cute, yeah. Okay. So within the dictionary also provides this other term. Okay, everybody say ho'ia. Hanaho ho'ia. So in the dictionary, it describes it as a ni'ihau name for a tern. Okay, that's it. So it's unclear if this is the general term for those that ohana of birds on ni'ihau, or this is a bird that maybe has gone extinct. Maybe this is a bird that has sort of lost its connection between the term and the actual bird itself. Maybe we don't know, right? But this is definitely, there's a lot that we don't know about this term still, right? But we have it. The dictionary also supplies these terms, kenola and tenora. So everybody say kenola. Okay, everybody say tenora. Okay, so what does this kind of sound like? It's a transliteration here, right? So it's a Hawaiianization of the term tern, right? So when so again, we got to do a little bit more research about this, but somewhere along the lines when this English term tern was introduced into Hawaii, Hawaiians Hawaiianized it, and we got kenola or tenora. Right. So again, talking specifically about that group of terns. Yeah. Here's one that I'm so proud of to be, I absolutely love. So kind of on my spare time, right? One of the things that I do is I'm part of the Papahano Mukuakea Cultural Working Group. I'm in the chair of the nomenclature committee, and we're charged with naming newly discovered species, a native Hawaiian species in Hawaii. So we've named a bunch of limu, we've named a bunch, we named some birds, we've named coral and things like that. And one of the things that we also do is we try to also look for we try to find terms, old terms, and try to match them to the species that have lost their Hawaiian names. So we're looking for what the hoʻia is, right? So anyway, there's this bird here, the blue-gray naughty, right? And so we, this group, the nomenclature hui, came up with two names to name this new bird, right, in Hawaii. So this is the Manu o Hina. Everybody say Manu o Hina. And the other name was Hino o Ku. Everybody say Hino o Ku. So here, as you can see visually, there's a lot of similarities from this one and the other Manu, right? That we saw, the Manu o Ku. So to kind of reflect that relationship, right? This one is found in Pahanau Mokuakea, but to kind of reflect that sort of dualistic relationship between these birds, we thought that using the term hina, which is the opposite of ku, right? Ku represents masculinity, and it talks about standing straight upward, whereas hina is the female counterpart, and hina means to lie down, right? So our group thought that providing this name can also represent that relationship between Kanaka and this place of Papahanau Mokuakea and the bird to Hawaii in general, right? So this is probably one of the newest terms that we have in the Hawaiian language, right? Talking about the name of this bird, right? And I love it because it's a really representative of a living language and a living culture. Yeah. So anyway, that's the Manu o Hina, Hino Oku, sort of brand new name within a couple of years, so we came up with it. All right, this is my last slide. This is my last slide. So this is an olelo no eo, or a Hawaiian proverb, and it goes, "He noio a ale no ke kailoa," the tern that treads on the billows of the distant sea, said in admiration of a wise person, right? So thinking about the Manu, yeah, I think that there's so much more that Kaiulani and Rich will talk about, but this Manu is so deeply ingrained into us as people of Honolulu, right? That we admire this Manu so much that we have a hui, that we have a presentation about it, right? But when we also think about how we have this sort of admiration for people, we admire the Manu in that same particular way, right? Each and every single time we say the name, the Hawaiian name of this bird and the Hawaiian names of the other birds, right? What we're doing is we're remembering its cultural importance, right? And we're also directly contributing to the revitalization of our language, of our culture, and of our people, right? So it is with that said, I drop all of these terms and all of these words for you guys with the encouragement and with the leo that you guys would use it. Yeah. So anyway, that's all. I don't want to take up too much time again. We'll have questions later, but I'm gonna pass the mic on to Iolani. Mahalo nui, everybody. Aloha.
Mahalo nui, Hauʻoli. I learned so much about the subtle nuances in the way our kupuna named the different animals in Hawaii. So next we're going to have Kumu Kaiulani, who's going to share information about Manuoku and their significance to Hawaiian and Polynesian voyaging practices.
Mahalo. Aloha, everyone. Mahalo for joining us. Mahalo, Hauʻoli. Even thrilled to learn more about Manuoku through what you just shared. Trying to find my share screen here. Okay, here we go. I just have a few pictures too. I'm not used to just doing Zoom with one monitor, so I'm getting used to this. Okay. And I'll just want to share the little that I know. I'm a student of great mentors who are hoʻokele, navigators of Hoʻolauleʻa, in the revival of voyaging in our modern times. And what I've learned from my mentors is that there are really two main seabirds that are land-based that we rely on for helping us kind of narrow down our target when we're searching for islands. So if you can imagine a voyage like from Hawaii to Tahiti, it's about 2,500 miles. And that whole time, there's really no other land in between that we're going to see if we're going the right way. And so that 2,500 miles, a navigator is constantly keeping track of how far they've sailed and in what direction, and just having this picture in our mind of where our destination is, where Tahiti is, or coming back home, where home is, and you always know where you've come from. And really that's how you're able to know where you are, is based on knowing where you've come from. So after traveling a couple thousand miles, you can imagine it's nice to have signs in nature that are going to clue you in that you are actually getting close. You are where you think you are. And the Manu o Ku is one of those beautiful hoʻailona in nature that let us know we are getting close to islands. This bird we look at as having about 120-mile range from land, although that's just kind of our the kind of average rules that we put on their range. They of course will go wherever they want, but that's kind of generally when we start to look for them. So they're really a way to let us know we're getting close. The rest of the time, right, you're relying on all the other natural clues, mainly celestial, right? The stars, the sun, the moon, the swells, what you have under you all the time. And so these are really, if you can imagine, after sailing for 20-something days, starting to see these Manu o Ku, you're just so excited that land is close. And there's one other bird, the noyo, that Kumu Hauʻoli also mentioned. This is another one of our kind of land-based seabirds that we look for. This one, the range is about 40 miles that we start to, when we see them, we know we're kind of in that range from land. So there are really these two main Manu, and Manu o Ku, of course, being the having a little further range than the noyo. I'll just add in a couple other Manu that we might see at sea that are not really going to help us know we're near land. This is one of them. This is the or the booby. These guys, we can see them in between, 1,000 miles out to sea, and they can just hang out at sea for as long as they want. Really, they can rest on the water. They will come and hang out on our va'a if they want to, especially if we've got some fish hanging out drying. So the is not going to be helpful for at least letting us know that we're near land. Another Manu that you may be familiar with, of course, the Iwa, very, I would say maybe popular, or one of the more known of our Manu. The Iwa, as majestic as this Manu is another bird that is not really going to help us know that we're close to land, because that great wingspan of theirs, like albatross, they can fly for a very long time. They just glide, right? The Manu o Ku is this tiny little bird, well, at least compared to these. And so they can, go to sea for the day, but they always come back at night to sleep. So I wanted to share a little story, and this is about my kumu, one of my kumu, Nainoa Thompson, who learned from Papa Mau Piailug and other kumu, but about his first voyage to Tahiti. So just to kind of give you an idea of how significant this Manu o Ku is. On his first voyage that he was a lead navigator, so this is in 1980, Hoʻolauleʻa's second voyage to Tahiti. Papa Mau was on board as his mentor, and the kind of the way they had set it up was that Papa Mau would only step in or interrupt Nainoa if it was absolutely necessary. So if you don't know, just Papa Mau Piailug comes from this tiny island, Satawal, in the group of islands we call it Caroline Islands. And the larger group we call Micronesia, that geographic part of the Pacific. So it's really to the south and west of us in Hawaii. And he was Hoʻolauleʻa's first navigator. So the first voyage in 1976. He came back after the tragedy of losing Eddie Aikau. He came back in 1980, accompanied Nainoa, as I said, as his mentor on this voyage. So Nainoa's first time at the as Alaka'i as the head navigator. And as they're approaching the islands of Tahiti, you know, keeping in mind constantly how far you've traveled every day in what direction. And according to his estimates, they were approaching soon the islands of Tahiti. And actually the first island group they aim for is the Tuamotu archipelago. So what you don't want to do when you arrive in the Tuamotus is arrive at night, because they're very low islands, not a lot of light. It's not heavily populated like our islands here. These are atolls, more like our Kupuna Islands up in Papahānaumokuākea. And so you don't want to approach them at night because you could crash into them. So what Nainoa had asked the crew to close up the sails, and after not having seen any land by sunset, they wanted to close the sails, and they were going to wait until morning to continue to sail, right? So that they could see signs of these low atolls in daylight. And so when the sun came up and they're going to start sailing again, Nainoa sees these manu o ku. Now, if you're using the manu o ku as land telltales, right? They're going to fly out to sea in the morning to get fish, to get food, and then they'll fly back to the island at night. So at night is when you would follow them, knowing that's the direction of land. And in the morning, you know, they're coming from land, so you would go to where they're coming from. Now, mind you, they're sailing south, right? From Hawaii to Tahiti, they're heading south. And these manu o ku that Nainoa saw were flying in the same direction that they were sailing. So the manu o ku were also headed south. And the way Nainoa kind of tells his stories, he kind of like, was just puzzled. He thought, oh my goodness, we passed the islands at night. We need to turn around. It's behind us. So he started to tell the crew, like, okay, we're going to get ready to turn the canoe around and fly and sail the direction that the bird came from. But that was the only time that Papa Mau stepped in, and he says, nope, you keep sailing this way and you're going to see the islands in an hour. So without really having any other explanation than that, of course, Nainoa, being the good haumana that he is, listened to his mentor, his kumu, Papa Mau, and they continued to sail south. And sure enough, within the hour, they spotted the first island. Now, it wasn't until later that Papa Mau had told him, or explained to him why he knew that they needed to continue to sail. And it was really that the manu o ku had fish in its beak. And so I love one of the pictures that Hauʻoli shared, had the manu o ku, the mama and the baby with fish in the beak. And Mau knew that this was the time for nesting for these manu o ku, and that bird had gone out earlier to sea, got fish to feed his baby chicks. And so that manu o ku was headed back to the island to feed babies before going out again to eat. So just in that little bit of, which might seem like a small bit of ike, is just like life-changing. I mean, it could have had a much different outcome, but really that the slight nuances, or just knowing the nesting patterns, his eyes being so attuned to looking at, you know, if this bird even has, you know, having fish in his beak. And I don't know how close this bird was to the va'a, but to have seen that from that far away, just kind of even more amazement around that ike of men like Papa Mau, Piailuk. And yeah, I thought I would leave you guys with that little story. Mahalo.
Mahalo Ka'iulani, that was so awesome. That picture was scary and beautiful at the same time. I really enjoyed learning about your experiences with manu o ku. So our final presenter is Rich Downs, who will be sharing information about the natural history breeding biology, city and county status, as well as Hui Manu o Ku.
Well, thank you for that introduction. Thank you so much for the preceding presentations. I learned a lot, and I've given lots of talks on the white terns, but I must say this is probably the one that I'm finding most enjoyable, in that we're able to lead off with the cultural and historical significance of this bird. So I'm going to talk about the Manu o Ku, or white tern, more from the ornithological perspective, which is sort of the bird itself. But there are lots of birds, of course, that we could have picked to focus attention on. But this one we chose, the people that I work with, because of its deep historical and cultural significance, and its really special, unique relationship with Hawaii. So I'm especially pleased to be part of a talk about the white terns, where we led with the historical, cultural significance and the navigation importance as well, because it's a really neat story, and happy to provide the sort of the ornithological part of that story. So I have a slide show I'm going to share with you as well here. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to talk to you about the white tern and the Hui Manu o Ku that you've heard a little bit about already. As was mentioned, my role is as the coordinator for the Hui Manu o Ku. So we'll start talking about the Hui Manu o Ku first, and then talk a bit more about the bird itself. So the Hui Manu o Ku was created back in 2016 after the first Manu o Ku festival took place. A group of us were standing around afterwards and sort of amazed at how many people came out to the first festival dedicated to this bird, and also sort of amazed at how many different organizations, groups were there to talk about what they were doing on behalf of the Manu o Ku. But then as the festival was wrapping up, we were sort of a bit sad in that, wow, we'd all come together for a brief time on that Saturday morning. But then we were all breaking down the camp and dispersing, going back to what we were doing before. It occurred to us, lots of interest in the bird, but no ongoing focused attention being paid to them. We're all concerned that there might be things that we're missing about the terns that we should be aware of, that we would continue to miss if we didn't start paying a bit more focused attention to them. So the idea was hatched to form to create an informal group that would allow the different groups and organizations that came together for that first festival to continue to work together, to collaborate, to partner on behalf of the white terns, or the Manu o Ku. So we formed the Hui Manu o Ku, and our mission is pretty simple and clear: to enhance awareness, appreciation, understanding, and conservation of the Manu o Ku. We have a number of, we refer to as partners. These are just collaborators, organizations, groups that have been working with us from the beginning. These are just some of them, but includes Fish and Wildlife Service from the federal agency, state agencies, DLNR, a number of educational organizations, institutions, and other conservation groups, including Hawaii Audubon Society. As it says, particularly happy to be leading this presentation today with the historical and cultural significance, as has been amply and well described already for you. This bird has a really close connections with Hawaii that go back a long ways in time. And I was happy to see when Disney produced the movie Moana a few years ago. I have grandkids who are interested in watching the movie, so I was happy to sit down and watch it with them. And there was one thing I was really hoping for, and that was knowing a little bit about the story of Moana and the important part that navigation played in that story. I was hoping that there would be an appearance by the Manu o Ku, and sure enough, there it was. You had to be watching for it. You would have missed it. It wasn't there long. But I was able to go back and capture the clip from it. So there you are, the Manu o Ku, helping Moana to navigate on the high seas. So it is the official bird of the city of Honolulu. This happened. The declaration was made back in 2007, and the reason for that there were several reasons, but most important just because this bird already has a really important cultural historical connection with Oahu, and so we're happy that back in 2007, the bird was honored by being designated as the official bird of the city and county of Honolulu. So from an ornithological perspective, the white tern is actually a bird is considered to be a bird of least concern. That is least concern in terms of its ability to continue to thrive. A lot of birds, these days are having a hard time holding on and not ending up on the path to extinction, especially birds here in Hawaii. This one, though, is doing well. Its numbers are increasing. It has a very wide range. If you go 20 degrees north of the equator or 20 degrees south of the equator, anywhere around the entire world, Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, Indian Ocean, you may well find your white terns. But in the Pacific region, there's one and only one area urban area where it comes to shore to breed, and that is you guessed it, the greater Honolulu area. So this map shows the known breeding range for the white terns on Oahu. We're the only one of the 5 major Hawaiian islands that have white terns breeding here, and they happen to be breeding right here where most of us choose to live as well, in the greater Honolulu area. And by documenting exactly where the trees are that they're breeding, which is one of the things we've been doing since 2016, is actually documenting, putting on a map each and every tree where we see them breeding. We've noticed that of all places, they are choosing to breed in the most developed parts of the island. So if you were to travel the length of Kalakaua Avenue, for example, all the way from Beretania on the north side, all the way out to through Waikiki to Diamond Head, you will find white terns breeding along both sides of Kalakaua, and north of Kapiolani, where there's that median. Virtually every one of those trees is now being used by the terns for breeding. So there are a couple of questions that we wanted to get a better understanding of when we formed the Hui Mano Oku. And one of those was, given that they are breeding here in town and really only here in town, why is that? One of the reasons that we've come up with is by choosing the areas that are most developed, they're actually also choosing areas where predator control is being done most aggressively and on a more continuing basis. So white terns do have to worry about things like rats, feral cats, mongoose, barn owls. And yes, we have those critters over the entire island, but there are, relatively speaking, fewer of them here in town. So that's one reason we think that they are breeding here in town and nowhere's out on the island. We've also discovered that, wow, they are very tolerant of human activity. So I mentioned Kalakaua as being a sort of a place that they're breeding. We see a lot of breeding. Oops. So if you happen to be downtown Waikiki, you'll notice there's trees all along the street where they're breeding, and this one in particular kind of caught my attention. So it's between the sidewalk and the busy street, about 6.5 feet off the ground. There's a white tern actually brooding a small chick right there. So not bothered by either the traffic, but the vehicular traffic behind it, or the pedestrian traffic in front of it. It's content to lay an egg and raise a chick right there amongst all of us and our noise. Well, and actually, as it turns out, you have white terns breeding right there on your campus at HCC. Now, a few years ago, we got reports from some folks who were doing some work on the roof on one of your buildings, of white terns, seeing white terns flying overhead. In fact, even having white terns come down and visit them, fly circles around their heads. So we knew they were in the area. But it wasn't until actually just this spring that we actually found a couple of trees there on campus where they're nesting. The two photos that were taken after dark were actually taken last night. So if you were to go out in the parking lot fronting on Dillingham, you should find a couple of trees with blue ribbons on them. If you look up where those red circles are, you should see an adult incubating an egg. The one in the middle is actually a shower tree in the parking lot, also on the Dillingham side of campus. And that one, we checked that one last night as well, and the adult is still there in that tree as well. So congratulations, we've confirmed that you have terns breeding on campus at HCC, which is, I think, just pretty awesome. So I'm going to use the word unique fairly frequently in talking about the white terns. This particular population is unique in that it's the only one that breeds in an urban area in the Pacific. But as a species, white terns are the only seabird that lays their eggs in trees without even pretending to build nests. All other seabirds that lay eggs in trees, and there are several species that do, all the others do something to prepare a site to receive the egg. White terns do nothing at all, absolutely nothing to prepare a nest site. What they do is they look for structures in the trees that will actually help them to hold the egg in place, such as a fork or where your two little branches come together, or a cup. They really like these cup structures, and cups are formed when either branches break off a tree or trees are trimmed, the branches are trimmed away. Scar tissue forms in the cut, around the edges of the cut, makes a nice little cup, and they just lay the egg in the cup. The picture on the right there actually shows a white tern incubating an egg. You can see the rim of the cup there that's holding the egg nicely in the tree. Yeah, so one of the things they say that so there are lots of species of trees here on Oahu that they could pick for breeding in, but we find that they're really pretty particular about the trees that they will use. And it's a species of trees that when branches are broken off, branches are trimmed off, these cups form, so they you can find nesting spots in the trees to use. So that's another reason why we think that they're breeding here in town and not so much outside of town, is because here in town trees are trimmed regularly and very well maintained. So we believe that the trimming of the trees actually improves the breeding habitat for them, and increases the chance that an egg that's laid and the chicks that hatch in the trees will actually successfully fledge. These are just a couple of pictures of what it looks like a tern nesting in a tree without an egg. The one in the middle actually lets you see up close sort of what a white tern egg looks like. It's about the size of about the size of a kukui nut. Beige in color with dark speckles. So this whole idea, though, about building laying eggs in trees without building nests, I must say, I thought that was strange. And when I first started studying the terns, I thought, eventually they will learn to do what like all other birds do that lay eggs in trees, which is to build a nest. But one day I was surveying over by the Ala Moana Center. It was a particularly windy day, and I noticed this one. I noticed this one in a tree. I apologize for that. Yeah, okay. So what that video would show you is that branch is whipping up and down, left and right, rather violently. And I was pretty sure that I was going to see the egg fly out of the tree, but it didn't. The adult held on, and then it occurred to me. In fact, it held on, and ultimately the egg hatched and the chick fledged. It occurred to me that if there had been a nest there, the nest would have blown out of the tree and the egg would have been lost. It's not unusual after particularly strong wind event, just actually you'll see bird nests on the ground. But since they don't have nests, the adults are actually able to sink the claws on the end of each the toes on their rather large feet, sink those claws right into the bark of the tree and get a very firm grip and stay in the trees themselves and hold that egg in place. As you can see from the photo on the left here, chicks are also have large feet and sharp claws from the time they're hatched, so they too are equipped to hold on in those trees despite the fact that it's windy here during that time of the year when most of the breeding is taking place. So they're well equipped to be able to stay in the tree without the benefit of a nest. Yeah, so the single egg is laid, and it's about 35 days from the time it's laid to when it hatches. This is a video that was captured of having troubles in my video here. There we go. This is actually the actual hatching of an egg in a tree on the campus over at Kepiolani Community College. You can see a good shot of the eggshell itself, and you can see the mother helping to remove the remnants of the eggshell. And there you go, eggshell's gone, and help to coax the chick back up underneath. We can continue to brood it. So I guess if you're lucky while watching the terns, that's something you might get a chance to see, the actual hatching of an egg. And then, as was mentioned, white terns are one of the few species of seabirds that raise their young on land and bring fish back home. Most seabirds will catch the fish, chew them, swallow them, and then come back and regurgitate sort of this fish slough into the mouths of their waiting chicks. Not very pleasant, but it works for them. White terns are one of the few species that catch fish whole and bring them back to feed the chicks, which, as was pointed out, proves to be a very useful navigation aid for navigators. This is what it looks like. Adults come back, chicks waiting for a tree on a closed street. See the cars going by in the background. Yeah, another neat thing you get to see or you spend time watching these birds in the wild here in Honolulu is the adults interacting with them, taking care of them, including feeding them. As many times as I've seen it, I never get tired of seeing that happen. So what do we know about the population of terns that breed here on Oahu? Well, so we believe they were here long ago, but there was a gap in the record of any documentation of them being here. The current population we date from 1961 when a breeding pair was seen over on the side of Cocoa Head. They've been here ever since. The numbers have steadily increased. Census was done back in the 1980s, and 5,100 breeding pairs were counted. Another census was done in the early 2000s, and the population had increased to, well, almost 700 anyway. And then a big gap. We did another census back in 2016, and we counted over 2,300 birds. We're in the process of doing another count right now. So we're trying to cover all the areas within the known breeding range, which extends from Hawaii Kai to the Pearl Harbor area. Trying to cover as much of that area as we can, all the streets where there are trees, all the parks where there are trees, all the schools where there are trees, checking for the presence of nesting white terns. If you see any in your neighborhood or any place out and about, there's not a blue ribbon on a tree, feel free to contact us. We'd be happy to go check it out to confirm if there is breeding there. So one of the things that we've learned about this current population is, relatively speaking, they're quite successful in breeding here. The population growth is over 7% per year, which is very good for seabirds. The overall breeding success rate is over 50%, which is also very, very good. We've documented terns breeding in, well, actually over 1,800 trees at this point. So the population continues to grow, and the number of trees that they're using continues to grow. We know what we know about the terns because of the citizen science project that we have going. We're collecting data on the terns. We rely on citizen scientists, volunteers to help us monitor the terns and submit survey information to us using apps that we've developed that will work on your smartphone or on any mobile device. So that's something that's of interest to you. feel free to contact me, and be happy to show you, how to collect the data, and you too can be a citizen scientist. The data that we use, we produce a breeding map, and that map is used for a number of purposes, including government agencies that are responsible for maintaining the trees here on our island. Tree trimmers especially find the map helpful. The birds are protected both by federal and by state law. And in order to make sure that they don't break that law, we make this information available to them so they'll know which trees have breeding in, so they can be particularly careful when working in them. And it helps us to know. We put blue ribbons on the trees to flag those trees, to let tree trimmers know, be careful when working around them. And also to help people know who are out and about, if they find a white tern chick on the ground, what to do. Because the chicks do sometimes fall out of the trees. And when that happens, we ask the public to help us get them back up in the trees. There are clues to look for to help you to know where to put the chick. One is the white droppings that accumulate on the ground on their nesting spot. The other one clue is an adult sitting up there in a tree with fish in its mouth, looking for its chick. We provide, we're printing up little cards that we can provide for you, so you can keep that handy with instructions on what to do if you find a chick on the ground, so you can put it back in the tree. If you can't do it, we invite you to call that hotline number, and one of our volunteers will come to try to put the chick back in the tree. Since we document the trees where they breed, we have a pretty good idea where most of them are. And with that information, with the help of artists who work with us, we're able to sometimes put the chicks back up in very, very, very tall trees. This was one that had just recently hatched and fell out of a very tall tree over by the art museum on Baratania. One of our volunteers that they helped us. This is Lake, an arborist, works for one of the bigger tree trimming companies in town that has loaned his expertise in climbing trees to help us put chicks back in trees and go up and fetch them when we need to fetch them to band them. So in this case, we called Lake, so we knew we're going to need help with this one, since the nesting spot was about 75 feet up in the tree. So Lake brought his equipment and applied his skills to climb up way, way high up in the top of the canopy of the tree. Yeah, so if you like the terns, you've got to love the arborists. They are a very important part of why the terns are here, why they successfully breed here. And that's the chick going up, being sent up in the tree in a little canvas bag. And then Lake was able to put the chick right back in the tree, exactly where it fell from. And the adults came back and took care of the chick, and it's ultimately successfully fledged from the tree. So it was a good, happy outcome. We're working to develop other tools and techniques to put them back in the trees, so we don't always have to call on a friendly arborist. If you're interested in learning more about the terns, learning more about the Hui Mano Ku and opportunities we can provide to so you can be involved in helping us study them and to preserve them, visit our webpage, www.whiteterns.org. That's our webpage, or you can also find us on Facebook under White Tern Citizen Science. We also invite you to attend the 8th annual Mano Ku Festival coming up on the first Saturday in May on the grounds of the Iolani Palace. Lots of those organizations that have an interest in the terns will be there. We'll have presentations about the terns and lots of activities for young and old alike. So so that concludes my part of the presentation. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to entertain them and do my best to answer them.
Mahalo nui, Rich, and all of our panelists today for sharing such valuable information about Manu o Ku Did anybody have any questions for any of our three panelists? And if you don't want to ask out loud, you can also put it in the chat and I can read it for you.
Oh, I guess I had a couple questions. It's always really interesting. I'm more of a plant person, but I just love also just learning about birds and anything of that, But I guess first question is for Rich. I was just wondering about the population here in Honolulu. So is it thought that it's a relatively it's a novel population, or is it something that it probably was here for a while, we just didn't study it?
Right. We believe it. We believe they've been here for we're pretty sure they were here a long time ago. But there was a gap at least in the written record. People have been studying birds, of course, watching them, documenting their observations here, for a long time. But as I say, there was a gap in the written record of actual breeding taking place here on Oahu until 1961. So the current population we think is quite new. We wish we knew more about the birds being here in the past, but yeah, the current population is relatively new.
I guess I had and I was kind of working when I was doing things, so forgive me if you already answered it. But for Haole, I guess it'd be more so so Manu Oku, like if I missed it, I'm really sorry. Like, what's the connection with like the Aku with the Manu? Like, was there any clarification through the research, like how that happened?
Yeah, Mika'i lo Kelanino. So in the beginning, I sort of mentioned that I could not find anything, and Rich also said himself, right? There's nothing in the written record, including the Hawaiian language resources, right? So I could not find anything about it. The only resource was in the Puku'i dictionary, which tells us it comes from Niihau, right? But if you look at the name, we cannot find it. I don't know if there's any specific mo'olelo that tells us, what is it. But the name itself tells us that it is not just it's not a child of Ku, right? It is Ku itself, right? So our kupuna possibly viewed this bird as the manifestation, the physical manifestation of that god, right? How? In what ways? I think that there's still, we still gotta discover that a little bit. Maybe there's some navigation things in that, but in terms of everything else, I think our knowledge is still very limited. Cultural knowledge is still very limited, and I'm worried that many of it has been already lost, right? But yeah, kalame. Mahalo.
Oh, mahalo. Yeah. I love. It's one of the few birds you see in the city. When I go through downtown, like once in a while, I always see like the little chick on a little branch. I'm like, oh, it's like every year I see the same tree, and there's usually a chick that pops up there. And it's like, oh, so nice to see. I did make a pair of earrings once with Manoku, but I haven't done it in like forever. But like the pattern, the little design. Yeah, mahalo everyone. So much ike.
I do have one question for you, Rich. I live in the back of Manoa Valley, and I think we have one of the most northern or most mauka nests near where I live. I live at the faculty housing in Manoa. And my brother claims, I don't know if I believe him, but he claims that one day he was walking in the parking lot and a pair of terns flew at his level and just kind of were checking him out. So they seem to be very friendly with people or comfortable with people. Is that common?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so there are lots of things about this bird that I think are just simply fascinating. And as a bird lover in general, there's a number of things about this bird that, for me anyway, just sort of single it out as this is truly an awesome bird. And that encounter that he had with the white tern, that is not unusual, and it's something that I still get goosebumps when it happens to me. Two things it could mean. We do know that they are curious. They're a very curious bird, and they will come down and check things out that attract their attention. So it could be that he had that visitation simply because the terns found him curious. Another reason might be that if they have an active nest nearby, an egg or a chick, they will sometimes become even more curious and even a bit protective. If you look around, if you don't see any signs of breeding, it's probably the visitation was simply out of curiosity. If you happen to look up and you notice one is sitting on an egg or there's a chick, It might be that they're coming by to deliver you a message. You're getting a little close to my egg or my chick. You back off. But that back to the curiosity aspect. If you're out walking a dog or pushing a baby carriage in an area where terns are known to be hanging out, there's an increased chance that they will come down to check out the dog or to check out the baby carriage. Don't know why that is, but those people, dogs, and baby carriages seem to really attract their attention.
I'll have to tell him I believe him now.
Yes, it happens very frequently. Yeah.
I see in the chat that Kavika had a question. You want to go ahead and ask?
Hi, mahalo. I don't know if this is a question for Haole or Rich, but Haole talked about several varieties of terns, and I was wondering if are those different species or just different markings on the same species? And does the hui keep track of those varieties as well? Like the Noyo and Hina.
Yeah, so I'll take a crack at it. So the white tern, it's actually one of like 40 different species of terns. Terns are a family of birds. And actually, it's interesting question about the white terns. There are some ornithologists who say, yeah, it's really a noddy. It's not. It shouldn't even be considered to be as a tern. It exhibits a number of behaviors that are more characteristic of noddies. And some of the really characteristics of terns that virtually all species of terns that engage in, this one doesn't very often. So one of the interesting things about the world of birds is that those who spend their time studying bird behaviors and doing DNA analysis, they frequently will reclassify birds, move them between different families. This is one I wouldn't be surprised if at some point it is moved from the tern family to the noddy family. Yeah, it's one of like 40 some different species of terns. So it does go by a number of different names. The official ornithological name is white tern. It's sometimes referred to as a fairy tern, but there is another species of tern that is actually the fairy tern. That one is down in New Zealand, Australia. That species is actually not doing well. It's endangered. There is a movement afoot to actually rename at least the population of terns that are in this part of the Pacific, including the Hawaiian Islands. There's a movement afoot to rename it the common fairy tern. There is a common tern. There is a fairy tern. The thought is this one is it's out of consideration for the fact that for so long it has been known popularly here in the Hawaiian Islands as a fairy tern. In consideration of that, the thinking is that we should rename it the common fairy tern because it is more common than the fairy tern. They're looking to split that group because of some differences that they're finding DNA wise and physiologically. So it may well get another name, but here it's referred to as a fairy tern, common fairy tern, white tern, angel tern, but Manu Oku just sort of catches them all.
Mahalo. Any more questions before we close?
I do. I have a question. This is Elizabeth. Is this bird the same as a frigate bird, or is it totally different species? The one that we find like on the humps of the cows, or always chasing the lawnmowers?
Oh,
Those white ones.
Yeah, those are actually cattle egrets, which are those are actually another very interesting species. The cattle egrets aren't native. They are a very curious bird, and you're right, they do follow lawnmowers around. Their name is interesting. When I first heard about cattle egret, okay, what's the connection with cattle? Was association. Egrets, that particular egrets is another family of birds, but this particular one it was noted to follow cattle around when grazing because the movement, the stomping on the ground of the cattle had a tendency to flush bugs, insects that the egrets liked, and so they would follow the cattle around to eat the bugs that the cattle were straying up. not many cattle, grazing here in town, but a lot of lawnmowers. So they follow lawnmowers and people that are out doing landscaping work to get the bug. So yeah, that's a cattle egret.
They look so similar. I mean, when they're flying, that
Yeah,
spray-
yep. Those and white pigeons actually. There are a lot of pigeons here in town, and quite a few of them are all white, pure white, like the white terns. But yeah, if you watch real close, you can see that white terns, for example, their wing beats are more shallow than a pigeon's wing beat. They just kind of do more fluttering rather than these big, deep wing beats. Yeah, but you have to look closely sometime to distinguish them, especially from a distance.
Mahalo.
Hey, any more questions before we close? All right, thank you so much to all of you for taking time to participate in our workshop today. Please remember to make sure you sign in and complete the evaluation, which are both in the chat. And especially I want to thank Hauʻoli, Rich, and Kaʻiulani for taking time out of your day to share your wealth of research and experience with all of us. I know I'm walking away from this feeling so much more informed. And I'm looking forward to going home later today to look for my Manu o Ku outside of my window. Mahalo nui.
Mahalo nui, everybody. We hope.